What a special weekend to spend some time in church. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to do my utmost best to break the word open for you. And I'm hoping that at the end of this journey, that Easter will what we are teaching you will expand your understanding of what Easter is about and its importance. You guys can, if you guys are ready, you can put up my first slide. And today we're going to talk about the third day thread. Now, for those of you who was in church on Friday, you will pick up that it's going to have a similar trend. We're going to look at a couple of things, but I'm going to get to that in a second. You guys must just change my stage display if you don't mind. And remember to start the timer. I'm just giving them a moment just to get ready. And then we are going to jump into the conversation. I hope you picked up on this. On Friday when we spoke about the 22nd thread, the whole idea was to highlight the significance of Genesis 22, Psalm 22, and Luke 22, with this idea that we get a broader picture on what the Easter story speaks about. And we're going to follow that trend today with the third day thread, which means it's actually very simple. When I prepared for the message, I wanted to show you where in the Bible these concepts of the third day pops up, and then we're going to draw this through to the New Testament and share with you the relevance. If you are new here, I just want to explain my approach just so that everyone is on the same page with regards to expectations. So usually what I do, I like to teach you guys a little bit about the Word, a little bit about the Bible, and then when we conclude, I try my best to make it very practical for us in order to apply this into our lives. So I do kindly ask that you give your attention as we work through this passage. We're going to read from John chapter 2, verse 18. And a very interesting thing takes place over here. And Jesus offends the Jews in the statement. And he says, so the Jews said to him, what sign do you show us for doing these things? The context of this passage is where Jesus is busy cleansing the temple. Verse 19, and Jesus answered them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Verse 20, the Jews then said, it has taken 46 years to build this temple, and will you raise it up in 3 days? Verse 21. But he was speaking about the temple of his body. Verse 22. And when therefore he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scriptures and the word that Jesus had spoken. Jesus comes to a place where he offends the central piece of the Jewish culture with thousands of years of history, and he says that he's able to break down the temple and then raise it up after 3 days. A very significant statement, and without a doubt got a lot of church people back in the day very angry with regards to that statement. But the disciples come to a place thinking back on what Jesus said and said, but there was a deeper meaning in his discussion. Now, again, I want you just to get this perspective. Don't forget this as we're going to work through a couple of these things. We have the blessing of having the answers already. So we have the easy job of sitting with the answer and looking back at the text. But you need to realize that many of the people that we are reading from, they did not have the answer. They had one thing, and this is what we call in church terms, it's called revelation. What we mean, not the book, just revelation from God. What we mean when we say this, it means that when we look at the text, it seems like God took a moment and gave us a sprinkle of hints throughout the text. But when we have the answer and we look back, we can see God spoke over here, God spoke over here, he moved over there, and it brings a little bit of a context of what we understand today. Basically, in modern terms, that is what theology is all about. But before we move on to the third day thread, I want to remind you, Friday we spoke about Genesis chapter 22, Remember the 22nd thread that we spoke about, the chapter 22 throughout the Bible. And Genesis 22, where Abraham asked that question about who's going to pay for this? Where is the lamb? Where's the sacrifice? Psalm 22, which Jesus, you can go to the next one for me, please. Psalm 22, which Jesus actually quotes on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? And David gives us this feeling that Jesus experienced. And then in Luke 22, when Jesus knelt down to pray, he had to make the choice whether he's going to follow through. And those points and those elements pointed us towards what happened on Friday. But now we are at Sunday. So the resurrection is the central event upon which Christianity stands. Some church people might be offended with that idea because we usually have two other dates in mind. Christmas and then, I'm sorry. My kids, they just spoiled me. It was just AJ, again, his fault. Just the other day, I was making a lame joke, and then they just reminded me of what was Mary's surname, and then he said Christmas. Just any case. I apologize. I'm supposed to be professional, but I can't help it. It's just Merry Christmas. For many people, Christmas is a special day, and then Friday, the sacrifice of Jesus becomes a special day. And don't get me wrong, it is. But I want to throw a curveball in here, and I want to make a claim where I want to say that resurrection today becomes the most significant celebration of the Christian faith. And this is why I say the statement that the resurrection is the central event. You can just go one back for me, please. It's the central event upon which Christianity stands. And I want to jump into that conversation with you a little bit today. I can see you guys are judging me already and we haven't even started. Okay, I'm just teasing. Next one for me, please. So why does the resurrection matter so much? I want you, if you have notes here, I want you to write this down. Remember, we spoke about this concept of foreshadowing. There's another word in theology, they call it a type, which means there are certain symbols and ideas that repeats itself throughout the Bible. Now, we're going to look at a concept like that. So throughout the scripture, you will notice that the third day often marks divine intervention and reversal. Now, I get this, okay? If you maybe don't go to church so much, this will be weird things that I'm talking to you about now, okay? It's going to sound a little bit strange. But I want you to just be, I don't want to say open-minded, but just allow me to take you through this, because this is why we show up for church. It's because the revelation becomes so significant throughout the Bible. I mean, we come to a place where it can't be coincidence. It can't be coincidence. Because it happened there in Abraham's time. It happened in David's time. It happened in Hosea's time. We're going to look at Esther for a short while as well. I mean, here's the question that pops up. What are the chances, right? Through thousands of years, and you see the same pattern pop up the whole time. So this is not something funny or strange. This is me just taking the concept of looking at what is the significance of these 3 days, the third day throughout the scripture, and then we're going to land with why today becomes so important. And guess we're going to start with? Again, Genesis 22, which we did Friday, okay? No, I did prepare a new sermon, okay? It just happens to be the same conversation. Abraham and Isaac, and it says the following in Genesis 22, verse 3. I made the text bigger for the older people in the back, And so Abraham rose early in the morning and said, it's a plezier, and said, I heard something, I assumed it was thank you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. Remember, we spoke about this on Friday where he received, God blesses him with his son and then requires him to sacrifice his son. If that sounds strange to you, you have to listen to Friday's sermon because it is strange, okay? And then he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. But pick up on this, verse 4. And on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. on the third day, the significant day, on this special day. But it's not so special. Well, it's special for us because we know how the story ended. But I want to take you back just to before he found relief. Because just before God sent the sacrifice for him in that moment, can you go to the next one? I want you to be aware that his son was as good as dead in that moment. Abraham did not go with this idea that his son will possibly be spared. He went with this idea of trying to be obedient to God while God asked him the most strangest sacrifice that he could ever have been asked for. Little did Abraham know that what is taking place in his story will be a hint of what is to come one day. And this is the crazy part, the next part. I can't even imagine this. He was ready and prepared to offer his son. But it's on that third day where the tension was the most tense, where he found relief. Where it points to the fact that he went to get ready the wood and the fire, and then God provided the sacrifice. Well, the New Testament explains the story like this. In Hebrews 11, a very famous chapter when it comes to the topic of faith, by the way. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son. Now, just pause over there. I just quoted from the Old Testament a story that happened thousands of years ago. And then I'm taking you to a conversation which we believe Paul had after the resurrection of Jesus. Would you mind? Yeah, thank you. Of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. Just pause over there. This wasn't part of the notes, but I just want to share this quickly with you. So Paul is being intentional about reminding the reader about the promise God gave Abraham. And then after the promise, God requires a sacrifice. So I just want you to experience that tension that God says that through your son, you will be blessed, but now you have to sacrifice him. Tension, okay? Next one for me. Verse 19. And he considered that God was able to even raise him from the dead. Listen to the terminology. From which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but I need you to actively participate and put your thinking caps on in this conversation. So the author reminds us and say, but he was willing to go and sacrifice his son, but something special happened because God intervened and provided a sacrifice, and it gives us this picture of what will happen to Jesus. So I want you to pick up this one theme that we're going to repeat over and over and over again. It is resurrection language. Now, I'm going to show you another story. This is also going to be significant, okay? Because Jesus even quotes this. Jonah in the fish. I was very tempted to put a whale in there. I was very, very tempted. But I'm scared you weren't going to laugh. So then I just put a fish there, and so nobody's going to just keep it plain. Look at the next verse. Jonah 1 verse 17. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Immediately you pick up on this terminology. Well, let me put it to you though. Jesus makes it very clear in Matthew 12 verse 40. Where he says, for just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Again, I want you to pick up on this shadow, this foreshadowing. We read about a story in the Old Testament, and we see these hints of the 3 days, and we pick up immediately, there's something about 3 days and God moving when it feels like things are finished. It's like God always pushes things just a little bit further than we are comfortable with. Can I just point this out to you? Some people quickly pick up at, 3 days, 3 nights, but, Friday, Saturday, it's 2 nights, it's Sunday. So can I just add this quickly? Just want to share this with you. Be careful of becoming so mathematically inclined with the text when it wasn't a mathematical conversation. It's about a theological theory and concept that is being revealed to us. So there's no point in breaking our heads trying to work out the exact minutes and exact hours, because it's a type of example with hints that's given that's pointed towards something that's happening in the future. That's just for free. Jonah 2 verse 10. We're going back to the Old Testament and again. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out upon the dry land. Again, after 3 days, Jonah was restored, and God intervened. And I want you to get this, okay? It is resurrection language. I want to show you something else now. I want to go to the next one, which is the prophetic word. And we're going to look at Hosea. And if memory serves me correctly, for those of you in the Bible school on Monday evenings, you will pick up that we're talking about a very difficult time in the nation of Israel. They're being bombarded by Assyria, they're being attacked, they're being invaded, and there's a big tension between this nation that is split. There's civil war going about, civil tension, and they're being attacked from the outside. And Hosea comes to a place where he gets frustrated with them because they're turning their back on God. Hosea 6 verse 1 says the following: Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us that he may heal us. He has struck us down, and he will bind us up. Now, very harsh terminology. I don't have time to explain the background, but it's not the sense of God being harsh. It's this idea that they have moved away from God, and they're not serving him anymore, and they kind of left over to their own demise, and that's what the conversation is about. But something interesting happens in verse 2, and he says the following. And it says, after 2 days he will revive us, and on the third day he will raise us up. Do you pick up on that theme again? Really? Like it's been happening a couple of times. Now, it feels like I just had one slide that I'm repeating, and that's exactly what I did, because it is resurrection language. Okay, do you guys get that by now? Okay. But wait. There's a couple of more. Esther's favor. Okay. It happens with the story of Esther as well. Please forgive me if some of these stories are unfamiliar to you. Unfortunately, do not have the time to expand on this, so please forgive me that I'm not explaining this in depth, but do a little bit of homework. Esther 5 verse 1 says the following: And on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, in front of the king's quarters, while the king was sitting on his royal throne. Okay, just carry on to the next one for me, please. And when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won favor in his sight. Again, pick up on this. Esther being in a severe, difficult position where her whole nation is being threatened. The entire culture is being threatened. But after the third day, it's placed in there intentionally to highlight the fact that something special happens after this 3-day period, and God intervenes. You guys want to guess what my next slide is going to say? Stop it. Okay. You guys would hope that I'm done by now, but unfortunately I'm not finished yet, okay? Because I want to show you the next one, okay? Where God reveals himself. And now we're going to go even further back to Exodus. You can go to the next one very quickly. And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I'm coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. When Moses told the words to the people, to the Lord. Next one for me very quickly, please. And the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments. You guys ready? And be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. You guys want to guess what my next slide is going to be? Stop it. It's resurrection language again. And again, we don't value this so much because we know what happened on the third day. But it wasn't so for the people who wrote the New Testament. They were living in the moment. They were hearing Jesus speak. They were seeing these things. They realized he was crucified, and they stepped away. They withdrew from him. Did you know? Okay, if you're in our church for a long time, you will know this because I repeat this a lot. But did you know that the disciples walked away from Jesus? They stopped believing. On the Friday when he was crucified, they gave up because the dream ended. It was finished. They saw the hero dead. And it wasn't, there was a sense of realness, because remember, I want you to pick up on this. This is not just a conversation of someone passing. I want you to feel that here. I want you to feel the hurt, the pain, because they were expecting Jesus to take over the nation. They were expecting a hero. They were expecting divine intervention, but the only thing that they got at the end of this journey was death. Well, if you read further, that's not what they got. They got life at the end, but I just want to illustrate this to you. Look at 1 Corinthians 15 verse 3. This is, again, we assume Paul writing this letter. And he kind of explains this concept to us. And he says, "For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scripture." Pick up on that. Christ died for our sins in accordance with what they were picking up in the Old Testament. Okay? Carries on to verse 4. That he was buried and that he was raised on the third day. Listen again. In accordance with the Scriptures. Again, Paul writing this and highlighting this fact about this 3 days the whole time, and then being a spokesperson for this big event on the Resurrection Sunday. I'm going to skip a couple of verses. This is intentional. Now, if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some of you say that there is no resurrection of the dead? Next verse. We almost finished with this part. But if there is no resurrection of the dead, then not even Christ has been raised. I want you to pick up on this terminology. What is he trying to say? He's trying to place the significance of our faith on one single event. It's not the crucifixion. It's the resurrection. Because the resurrection becomes proof. So, why is the resurrection so important? 3 points. Number 1, it validates Jesus' identity. I'm going to give you the best piece of wisdom that you've ever received. And it's not my wisdom. It's from Andy Stanley. It's going to be so good. I'm going to use it again. Use offering twice. Okay. If a man predicts his own death and resurrection, and then he actually does it, you just go with what he said. Okay. Now, you won't find that basically in the Bible, okay? But I love what Andy said. And I know I just want to create some context. He is using humor intentionally, so please don't be offended by that idea. But in the humor, that's the main point, is that they had this journey with Jesus. He died, and then they saw him resurrected, and then suddenly something popped up open. And then they were able to write the New Testament because they experienced the revelation, and suddenly it just blew open the Old Testament, and all these stories just made sense immediately. As they've been working through this, because they've been experiencing this, and suddenly, after the resurrection, the entire story just begins to make sense. But it didn't make sense before the resurrection. It was limited before the resurrection. It was small. Can I share this quickly with you? The resurrection does not only validate Jesus' identity, but it also validates the cross. Because without the resurrection, Good Friday is just a tragedy. If it wasn't for the resurrection to take place, what we do today would not exist. Because it would have ended by the cross. But the cross is not the final story. It continues after the story with the resurrection, and then it's distributed to the churches, and that is what we do today. But with the resurrection, the cross becomes a victory. So I think for many of us, we put a lot of emotional emphasis on the Friday, which is good and which we have to do. But please do not diminish the significance of the resurrection, because it becomes foundational to why we gather. And so be careful of running after sensations, of celebrations and feasts. if you do not understand the context behind this, because what happens is we just enjoy the celebration and sensation from a cultural perspective, but we don't have a conviction. We don't have a conviction on why we show up every Sunday. We show up every Sunday because someone claimed to be the Son of God, and a lot of people didn't believe him. And then he died on a cross, and then a couple of days later, there were entire community who first believed in him, and then they didn't believe and walked away, and suddenly they re-engaged, and they saw him alive after he was deceased, and they physically saw the manifestation of thousands of years of hints through the history of mankind, standing right in front of them. And it was so overwhelming that they started writing about it. And not only the good parts, the bad parts as well. They wrote about their failures, their shortcomings. They loved writing about Peter's mistakes. I don't know why. Maybe they didn't like him, but there's a whole bunch of those conversations in the Gospels as well. And you just can't help but getting this realness feeling when you work through the story. And this brings me to the final point here, and it validates the Christian faith. Listen carefully to my next statement. This is going to be probably one of the most important parts. Christianity is not a philosophy or a lifestyle. I want you just to absorb that for a second. It's not just a philosophy, and it's not just a lifestyle approach. I want you to understand, we gather here today because it's rooted in a historical claim. Now it becomes personal and sensitive because we used our faith as a lifestyle choice. We used it as principles. Ladies and gentlemen, God did not send his Son just so that we can come to a place where we become perfect human beings. Okay, I know some might be offended with what I'm trying to say. God did not send his Son with this idea of perfection. He sent his Son with this idea to build a relationship and get us connected back to him. But too many of us use the Bible like a self-help book. It's never been the intention. Too many people use the Bible to fix their marriage. Too many people use the Bible to fix their finances. And don't get me wrong, it's not that you can't use the Bible, because there are principles that is governed in the Word, that when you apply them, they will change your life. But Jesus did not die on the cross so that we can just have a lot of money in the bank account. Can I even share this? This is going to, okay. Dare I say that Jesus didn't die on the cross just for your happiness? Just for my happiness? Come on. How many of us walk this journey? We walk this journey because we mess up in our life and we hope that God can restore us to a place of happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, when you serve God, happiness is not always a destination. I know it sounds very harsh what I'm sharing with you, but please just tolerate me for a moment. I'm not trying to discourage your faith. I'm trying to create perspective for you about the significance of the resurrection, because it's not a selfish thing. It's a historical event that identified and edified and highlighted the fact that Jesus was who he said he was. And when that is true, we ought to give him a little bit more time with our ears. We ought to take his words a little bit more serious. We ought to submit our hearts because God was speaking. So many times we struggle to serve, we struggle to connect with God because our destination is always happiness. But sometimes God requires sacrifice. Sometimes God requires us to take up our cross and carry burdens. Sometimes God asks of us to forgive when we don't want to. Sometimes God asks us to love people who do not look anything like us. Sometimes God asks us to pray for people who we claim are our enemies. And so we've got this misguided idea that I'm serving Jesus because I want a good lifestyle. I'm serving Jesus because I want happiness. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you can't be happy and serve God. You can serve God and be happy. It can mutually exist. But if your pursuit is happiness, you're not going to last long. Sorry, I'm having conversations with myself because I want to be careful what I share. Christianity is not a philosophy or lifestyle, but it's rooted in a historical event. Resurrection becomes significant because something happened that turned scattered followers into fearless witnesses. Fearless witnesses. And they stood up and they were relentless. Before the time, they were battling to ask, who can sit at the right side of Jesus? Who can sit at the left? Who will reign when Jesus takes control over the town? Who will be in that special positions? Afterwards, it was about relentless pursuit of sharing the good news, even when Paul lost everything. I want you, this is just a side note, I want you to read very carefully when you read the writings of Paul, the immense pressure he had on his shoulders because his credibility was questioned. This is not, I'm just going to give this quickly to you, okay? His credibility was questioned. You know, when it comes to intellectuals or scholars, if there's one thing that you want to, if you want to hurt an intellectual person, take his credibility away from him. Any person. Take his reputation and his credibility away from him. And Paul comes to a place where he needs to offer up his credibility because he claims God has given him an assignment, but he's locked up in prison. He is so poor, he's dependent on the generosity of people around him to bring him food so he can feed himself. In today's Christian standards, nobody will follow that person. Because he's not rich, how can God bless him? He's not successful, how can God bless him? He doesn't even have a home. He stays in prison. And so I want you to get this concept when it comes to the significance of the resurrection. It's not this concept about perfection. It's about this idea that God has shown up in the history of man to give us an opportunity to say, listen, yeah, this is my son. Take careful heed of what he's sharing. And he puts a seal on it to say, I've resurrected him. Something that is ridiculous. If you think it's crazy for us to think about this, it was crazy for them to think about this. I mean, it was just this extraordinary story. But you can't help it that when you see Jesus dead, and 2 days later you have a conversation with that same person, to be moved so much that the things of the world doesn't matter anymore. I've explained this whole 3-day story, the significance of the resurrection. Now I'm going to conclude before we're going to go home. We're going to sit at the table, but before we do that, I want to ask you a question. What have you been given? What have you given up on? I want you to embrace the awkwardness and the silence for a second. Because it's possible that there are things in your life that you have stopped. Not because of any strange reason other than feeling empty, feeling broken, and feeling alone. Can I ask you another question? Where have you stopped believing? For many of us in the church, when we started walking with God, there was relentless faith. There was selfless prayer. But as we walked on this journey and we didn't get our expectations met, we scaled our faith down to lifestyle and culture choices. I hope this is making sense what I'm sharing with you. We scaled it down so that we can look Christian, but in our hearts, we are not converted. But we won't pick it up here. You can't see it. Because we are all going to use communion together. We are all seated here, gathered together. We all read the same slides together. We sing the same songs. You can't see it, but I know you know it. Because you can feel it here. So the question that I want to ask you today is the same that Paul said. If Jesus was raised from the dead, which we believe because of the New Testament, which we believe because this gathering is still going on after thousands of years later, if he was resurrected, do you not think that we have the responsibility to incline our ear to his words? Because God was busy speaking to us. And this is so much more than just the outward appearance. On the contrary, won't you agree when I say that Jesus had zero regard for the outside appearance? Zero regard. But he was more concerned about what's taking place on the inside. And I don't know what you've been battling with when it comes to God. I do not know why you struggle to serve him. I do not know why you struggle to surrender. I do not know the challenge that you face. And by the way, I'm not discrediting your challenges. I'm not discrediting your emotions. All those things are many times real in our life. But I've got one statement and I've got one thing to say. If we make the effort to serve God, please just understand that in the context of what I'm trying to say. If we make the effort, I'm putting that in hakkies. If we make the effort to serve God, if we make the effort to show up, if we make the effort to kneel down and pray, if we make the effort to celebrate Easter, you should make the effort to serve him in an authentic manner in here as well. Because it doesn't help you just do it on the outside, because then we are just being culturally relevant to what is acceptable within this building. For Jesus, it was not about being cultural relevant. It was about being obedient to what God is doing in that moment. Have you been obedient to God's call in your life? Have you been obedient to him speaking? He's given us these hints. He's given us this central historic moment to seal his authority and grab your attention. The question for us today is whether you are able to push through the cultural acceptance of being a Christian into coming to a place where we can call ourselves disciples of Jesus. We apply discipline in serving him. Because it's not about a minimum requirement here today. It's not about the conversation of being good enough. It's this conversation of being authentic and giving your heart before God. As we conclude, what relationship, what dream, and what prayer have you quietly buried? So I want to tell you today that throughout the history of the Bible, God has shown up after the point where we think things are done. He's shown up in a place where we've given up. I want to encourage you today. Go fetch that old prayer that you've given up on and dust it off for a change. That dream you had, maybe God spoke to one of you before, but you have stopped believing in what has been spoken over you because it's been a bit long. This is the conversation today. It's time to revive that prayer. It's time to revive your heart. It's time to revive your dreams. It's time to revive this which you have been given up on. I want to invite you. I want to invite you in today. Don't you want to trust God one more time? Don't you want to allow him one more time? Maybe you've tried this and it feels like it's not working and you're kind of drawing away from him. But I want to give you an invitation again today. Don't you want to give God one more chance to allow him to change your heart so that you don't become so focused on doing good things? I'm not saying this is bad. This is beautiful things. We are actually encouraged to do this. But coming to a place where it's not just good things that we are doing, but it's real things that we are doing as well. And that is the challenge that we are going to face with. I'm going to ask you just to bow your heads if you don't mind. And I'm going to give you just a minute or two, just to allow God to search your heart. We're going to take a moment. We're going to go over to the table soon. Maybe the problem that you've been facing is you've been running after structures and you've been running after information. But you have an opportunity just to connect with God. Maybe you don't feel welcome here today. Maybe you feel like an outsider. But I'm here to remind you today that you are not an outsider. I'm here to remind you that you are extremely welcome here today. I want to remind you that a sacrifice it's already been paid for you so that you can have access. And maybe your life hasn't been so great and it's been so fantastic, and maybe you've been battling with a lot of things, and I'm here to tell you it's okay. It's fine. Don't be confused with church talk and church structures. I want to remind you that we've all been saved by grace. We have all received mercy. We have all received a space by the table. And it's not because of our goodness. It's for one simple reason, that God has given us this opportunity. I'm going to ask them, if they don't mind, just for comfortability's sake, if they can just put off the lights for us, keep the lights on the stage for me, please, if you don't mind. I also want to invite the team that will be helping me to serve the communion to please move forward. And we want to show you, as we're going to go over to the communion table, just a short little video clip. It was done by our school students, and they want to share a short little message with you about why Easter is so important to us. And immediately after the video, we're going to share communion together, and then we're going to conclude the service. Thank you.